It's funny when you're getting into a band. For fans that don't know Interpol, I would say that, yeah, this is a great record to get to know us with, and if you find yourself passionate about this one, then go back and get the first two. I think a diehard Interpol fan would always say get the first album, and work your way up, but I think that this one is our best record and is our best best record in a number of ways. I think our songwriting is, at its best, because naturally you evolve as artists, so we're just better at what we do. We're better at our understanding of how we work in the studio. I think we're more adventurous than we've been in the past. And then there's this other thing where all of the first two albums were both written over the periods of years. The first album, everybody's first record, you've got forever to write it. But our second record was songs that we'd started writing before we even went on tour for the first album, but they weren't they weren't ready for the first record. So they kind of were, 2 years gestating while we were on the road with our first record, and then we, finished them after that, and then wrote a bunch of new songs, and those two bodies of songs became our second album. So first and second records are songs from long periods of time. The third album is just one big batch of songs that we wrote over about 8 or 9 months. So there's a cohesiveness to the sound. I think it's a record that flows better and just sort of has a real identity as a moment in time. And the other ones are more these sort of periods of time. So as I said, I think it's where we are now. So if you're going to assume that we're evolving as artists and getting better, then this new record is probably the best one to check out. The fundamental principle of band names is that they sound cool. That's the most important thing about a band name. The reason why it particularly worked among other names that might have sounded cool at the time is the idea of Interpol as this sort of agency where, it's really more about whatever task force they might have in place or whatever operation they might be doing. It's not so much about special agent this or that or an individual. It's really more about this sort of agency that you don't know anything about. It's a very public thing and you don't know anything about it, and it's not about the individuals that make it up. It's about this broader mission. So that idea with Interpol being that we're these four very strong-minded individuals and artists who kind of come together more as a collaborative than a band in a traditional sense, where band traditionally is going to have one or two songwriters and sort of one or two dominant forces creatively. That's typically what you hear about, and that's not really the case with us. It was always sort of either we all have equal say or the band doesn't exist, and that was from the get-go. So that kind of name, apart from, as I say, primarily sounding cool, does sort of, all the things that are implied when you think about the real Interpol, as far as mystique and things like that, those were all concepts that we knew would be a good sort of umbrella over what we were